Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment, which is also known as New Mexico. And today's date, actually, it is Wednesday, October 5th, 2016. Yep, so I'm gonna make this one a little bit more short, I would say. Not like longer like the past few other shows. And many people are questioning the whole Julian Assange ordeal with the WikiLeaks 10th anniversary, because everyone's been talking, some people hyping up about the whole thing about, oh, he's gonna open up the leaks for Hillary to get her end her elections and so forth, end her presidency, or race for the presidency. And I observed it, analyzed a lot of those areas, and he, of course, Mr. Assange decides to recant it for the time being. He just made some brief remarks, and of course, the schedule wasn't really documented on there. And I understand this a little bit more strategically, instead of people just trying to hype up, wake up. And of course, some of the so-called other like alternative media shows, I don't have to say any names, you know who they are. We're like really pushing it, and they start criticizing them on it for not really presenting. Well, you have to really understand what information war is about. You gotta be strategic, it's gotta be methodical. And even Sun Tzu, in his book Art of War, states that. So people assume it's gonna be all spill the beans right there. Well, I don't blame Julian for not really pushing it. Timing is always important when you attack. So it's always the place and time. Time isn't right. I understand it. Remember, the tyrants in government in our country and the world, this whole one world order network, they've done everything on a small, snail pace to condition us from generations and beyond. And to be very sincere, they are inferior because they're way behind schedule. Information war is not just wham bam, thank you ma'am. It's like everything else, a chess game. So I cannot criticize Julian Assange for putting this out. However, that time's going to come. It will be released. And on the other hand, folks, on Hillary Clinton, I tell everyone this. She's just another anti-freedom stooge. What does Donald Trump and her have in common? They're both for bigger government. And I'm not the only one that can attest to that. Judge Don Patano did the same thing. Just look it up. So with my observance on this, it will come out. So everyone should be patient. Furthermore, when I say Hillary Clinton's an anti-freedom stooge, only thing I can recommend to you folks, look at her voting record as a U.S. Senator. Then come back and talk to me if you're still gonna defend her. Enough said on that aspect. And of course, there's things going on. There's a claim from truth activists about the Russians were killing, attacked some sea battle, killed 30 Americans, and Israelis were involved, the ISIS network, and the battlefields and all that. But I'm not going to really jump to conclusions, but always observe responsibly. But we all know one thing for sure. They had the so-called drills in Russia, and there's even reports on drills in China. They made a statement that they're ready to be prepared for World War III. Hopefully that's not the case, because that would really fulfill Albert Pike's prophecies in his book Morals and Dogma. Albert Pike was a third-degree Freemason and was a Confederate general that was tried and indicted for treason. However, Andrew Johnson pardoned him, President Andrew Johnson at the time. So, like I said, my friends, you gotta really pay attention, look at the bigger picture. Don't worry about these little petty things and celebrities getting robbed or divorces and so forth. The Church of Hollywood and the Church of the Grammys, the Church of Billboard magazine don't mean a damn thing to me. So I know a lot of my friends, brothers, sisters in the Southeast region are prepping up for Andrew. Looks like Haiti and the Dominican Republic got a lot of damage, and even Cuba. You know, put them in your thoughts as well. And a lot of crazy insanity is happening worldwide. So that's how I like to think of those individuals that are victims of tyranny. It doesn't matter what you look like and what your views are. It's just an insane world, as usual. So, speaking of insanity, I'm gonna be just talking on some subjects here. And this came out of the New American, came out yesterday. And this one's entitled, UN Plan to Force Americans to Pay Reparations for Slavery. And it says here in the recent report, the United Nations criticized the United States for making no real commitment to reparations and to truth and reconciliation for people of African descent. Laid out plans to access financial resources to the country to fix their purported failure. Specifically, the working group expert on people of African descent has been tasked with implementing a UN mandate aimed at establishing a working group or other mechanism of the United Nations to study the problem of racial discrimination faced by people of African descent. The group's progress is to be reported to the United Nations Human Rights Council and General Assembly. This particular mandate of the global government in waiting is divided up into 6 activities that should be accomplished by 2017, the last year of the working group's authorities to investigate the plight of people of African descent. Bottom line, the United Nations created this group in 2002 to gather all relevant information from governments and non-governmental organizations that will help them in eliminating racial discrimination against Africans and the people of African descent in all parts of the world. Like they're the only ones that have been discriminated and deprived. Please, you're just an example. As would expected, while their theoretical target of these investigations is the world, the true target is the United States, the global crowd's biggest and most insuperable obstacle in its path toward total world domination. Lately, though, the stumbling block that is the United States is going out of its way to transform itself into a stepping stone. On September 26th, the U.S. Ambassador Keith Harper announced the results of a dialogue conducted by the UN and some American groups that should give every friend of liberty pause as it reveals the depth and width of the UN's plot to infiltrate American government and law enforcement from the smallest town to the largest metropolis. Yep, Interpol, Global Pol, One World Order Police. In a statement, Harper reports that the UN's working group met with federal, state, and local government officials, judges and lawyers, members of Congress, police officers, academics, members of civil society, and hundreds of African Americans in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, Jackson, Mississippi, Chicago, Illinois, and New York City. Can we say part of the One World Network of some of these cities I addressed is this I narrated. Just because the UN met with these groups doesn't mean that the United States approves of their plan and its principles, except that the U.S. delegation released a statement announcing it takes on the talks. We're happy to arrange a visit and take note of the working group's conclusion and recommendations, which we will distribute to relevant stakeholders, including the state and local governments who met with the working group for appropriate consideration. The U.S. representative said. Despite the emphasis on blacks and their plight, the American delegation declared in its summary of the summit that the United States from Washington, D.C., the city governments nationwide has made great progress toward countering racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related forms of intolerance. There you have it. It's not just slavery that the American people must make amends for. They should be forced by the UN working through local and federal government agencies to demonstrate their acceptance of everything and everyone. Should Americans resist this forced acceptance of the UN's anti-discrimination indoctrination, the working group has a plan to overcome that little setback. Paragraph F, subsection 3 of the group's mandate provides access to financial and developmental institution and operational programs. Psych, having access to these financial institutions will make it much easier for the UN to force Americans to contribute to the development programs Psych intended for the African descent. The money siphoned from these sources will be by the UN to exert control over health systems, education, housing, electricity, drinking water, and environmental control measures, forcing them to employ an appropriate number of people of African descent. Should this strategy prove insufficient, then the UN will enforce other affirmative or positive measures, a strategy within the human rights framework to establish this racial equality that it claims is the purpose of the policy. One need only imagine how devastating such a program could be to the middle class of the United States. People living from paycheck to paycheck because of the legal plunder perpetrated by their own governments at all levels be subject to increased income tax levies to repair all the harm their ancestors ostensibly did to the ancestors of their neighbors. Not just any neighbor, though. The money collected by American governments at all levels will be earmarked for reparations to be paid to African Americans. Surely the plutocrats at the UN know very well how this program would only work to exacerbate the growing racial divide in the United States and would give otherwise open-minded people without any racial prejudice reason to resent black people. People they would now see as recipients of another government-managed welfare program to which they claim to be entitled for no other reason than the color of their skin. At the heart of it, this is the United Nations purpose to follow the well-worn path trod by every tyrant who wanted to rule over a multitude of formerly free men. This century-old despotic design is to divide up a population into smaller communities that can be manipulated into seeing each other as for the reason for their respective socio-economic distress. Can we say mind control 101, my friends? The last of the recommendations published in the working group's plans is in for the United States to implement Executive Order 12898. That order signed by Bill Clinton in 1994. Yep, that CFR wuss himself. Directs federal agencies to identify and address the disproportionately high and adverse human health or environmental effects of their actions on minority and low-income populations to the greatest extent practicable and permitted by law. The order also directed each agency to develop a strategy for implementing environmental justice. The order is also intended to promote non-discrimination in federal programs that affect human health and the environment, as well as provide minority and low-income communities access to public information and public participation. See, this like cockeyed, I would say. In the 22-page report of its investigation into the plight of the African American, the working group lays out the blueprint beyond Executive Order 12898, establishing how it could enforce a climate of acceptance and equality for the black population in America. Should these plans be put into practice, the United Nations would insinuate itself into every aspect of life, from the grocery store to the gas station. There is no part of human activity that would not fall under the purview of the globalists. None of these policies, however, would serve to reduce racial animosity in America. In fact, should the United Nations, the cooperation of all levels of federal government, force one ethnic group to pay for past wrongs done to the ancestors of another ethnic group, the result will not be healing of wounds, but pouring of the salt of socialism into those wounds, with the fleece feeling greater anger at the beneficiaries. The working group, the United Nations as a whole, and the government of the United States of America are prepared to implement all these programs over the next 10 years, culminating in the complete control of economic resources by 2024. It's like this, my friends. This is one of the greatest Ponzi schemes they're going to put on everybody, including the African Americans. Where will all this money be coming from? The taxpayers, including them. It's total extortion. And when you think about it, my friends, when they did the 14th Amendment, we are all in a technocratic plantation. Doesn't matter what you look like. If you think only one group got screwed, how about the white Irish? They got shafted. They had white slaves back then too. And what really boggles the mind, because the UN there's a lot of some claims of reports on some of their corruption and tyranny, including personal slave trade within that entity. And of course, they can't even clean their own toilets, as far as I'm concerned. Because I was like looking through, give you a couple of examples from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Talk about the United Nations corporate corruption and need for reform. And of course, talk about the whole thing about hotbed for corruption and abuse, diplomatic immune, and all that good stuff. They does not issue clear reports of donor nations. And a lot more on accountability related ordeal and so forth, and the Farm for Food for Oil scandal, which the UN profit. And you know what? They don't give a damn about these folks. This is like total doublespeak. I'm going to put that in there, okay, as a footnote. And of course, there's another one too on alleged bribery from the UN. So you believe that you're going to have some global entity with so much filth, their own version of Rome, of the falling of Rome, going to tell us what to do? I always tell this to folks about racial division and so forth. How can we heal ourselves? Talking to each other as individuals, one-on-one, articulate conversations, no mudslinging, no hatred, or holding grudges. Look, my ancestors were in Europe, came from the great immigration times of the early 20th century. They had nothing to do what happened in the United States back then. Okay, I'm part Hungarian descent. They didn't own slaves in the United States. They were in an area called Austria-Hungary. My great-grandfather, I've looked it up, was born in Austria-Hungary. 1881. What's it got to do with slavery in the United States? Absolutely nothing. And this is why I'm really leery. I don't really buy this crap. We're all being duped, regardless of what you look like, what your heritage is, etc. We're all being used. Don't fall for this hype. As far as I'm concerned, the United Nations is one nefarious outhouse. Explain to them. Look up. I did some episodes about how U.S. peacekeeping troops are raping and pillaging innocent people around Africa, including Haiti. That's more essential right now. Okay, how come there are reports about Haitian people getting slaughtered and getting brutalized, raped, and pillaged by UN peacekeeping troops? during that time. What happened? Should the UN give them reparations? I believe so. They should be tried for war crimes, as far as I'm concerned. They're just an example of what a global government wants to fulfill. Punish people for being alive. Plain and simple. So I'm going to add those two little memos on there, and alleged bribery and so forth, and corruption and needs reform. As far as I'm concerned, they need to be abolished and need to get out. That's how I see it. They are blasphemous, and they're a very good example. All right, this is by Daniel Jennings, and he came out, the 4th, and it says here, Judge, we should eliminate all guns. No reason to have them. This is what Daniel Jennings have to say. Every gun in America should be destroyed. So says one Oregon judge with the power to sentence people to prison. If I could, I would take all the guns in America, put them on big barges, and go dumping them in the ocean. Judge Kenneth R. Walker said at a sentencing hearing September 28th of Marcel Lee Daniel Jr., who had shot and killed a pedestrian during a drive-by shooting. Nobody would have a gun. Not police, not security, not anybody. We should all eliminate them. We could save 33,000 people a year if we didn't have guns in this country. This guy was in a wet dream, as far as I'm concerned. He continued referencing the 1990s incident in Australia after a major shooting rounded up all guns. They haven't had near death as we do here in this country. Walker's rant was captured on video and posted to YouTube, and a reporter by the Oregon newspaper. You can check the video below. Guns are a scourge of this country and should not have one, as far as I'm concerned, Walker said. There is no defense to guns. There's just absolutely no reason to have them, but it is a right of the people in this country to own and possess them, and I will not say anything to affect that right. Walker has served on the Multnomah County Circuit Court in Oregon for 10 years. The newspaper reported prior that he was a defense attorney. Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's just talking out of his ass, Judge Walker. Typical clown. So, and people know me on the show well enough that 2.5 million people use firearms to protect themselves and families. And another thing too, this is all a wet dream. Judge Walker, do me a favor. Go watch No Guns for Negroes, because you are pro-slavery. You are an Uncle Tom to the tyrannical establishment. Okay? And don't get me wrong. Using firearms for criminal intent is a no-no. Okay, you're talking to a person that is pro-firearms. But if you use it for criminal intent, you deserve harsher sentences. Like I may say in the past, I support 1020 life in the state of Florida. If you use a firearm for a crime, yeah, it should be punished more harshly. That's for anyone that uses weapons for criminal intent. I use it for self-defense. Because one thing for sure, the police aren't obligated to protect me. And another thing too, criminals will find ways to make them, use them, or sell them in the black market. So you know what, Judge Walker? Resign. Go be a Walmart greeter for all I care. Plain and simple. You're nothing more than a pathetic stooge, and I don't give a damn if you get offended by this or not, okay? Well, here's another one here. That came from Off the Grid News by Daniel Jennings. And it says the feds are using license plates readers at gun shows. Thousands track, local police helping. Federal agents and local police use license plate readers to identify track visitors at gun shows, according to a new report. Police set up a reader that recorded license plate numbers of thousands of visitors to a gun show at the Del Mar Fairgrounds near San Diego. The Wall Street Journal reported the license plates numbers were turned over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. Officials used the information to try to find gun smugglers across the U.S.-Mexico border. Emails obtained by Journal indicated the plate of every vehicle that entered the fairgrounds for the crossroads of the West Gun Show was recorded. Readers also were read and set up at gun shows in Ontario, California, and Coast Mesa, California. We would like to see if you can support an outbound outbound guns ammo operation at the Crossroads Del Mar Gun Show. An email from ICE to identify law enforcement agency states we should like to deploy license plate readers. A license plate reader or scanner is a high-tech camera that automatically records an image of every plate it spots. A single reader can record thousands of numbers using digital imaging technology. ICE tried to keep its use of the readers a secret, but journal reporters were able to obtain emails about their use via the Freedom of Information Act. The agency, in a statement to the newspaper, acknowledged that it had conducted the surveillance. Privacy advocates expressed concern about the operation. Jay Stanley, an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union, said the surveillance highlights the problem with mass collection of data. Gun buying and crossing borders does not make someone a criminal, he said. But because those two activities in concert fit somebody's idea of a crime, a person becomes inherently suspicious. Eric Pratt, executive order of Guns of America, also expressed concern. Information on law-abiding gun owners ends up recorded, stored, and registered with a violation of the 1986 Firearms Owner Protection Act and the Second Amendment, Pratt told the Journal. Bob Templeton, the CEO of Crossroads of the West, was also upset. It obviously is obtrusive and an activity that hasn't proven to have any legitimate law enforcement purpose. Templeton said, I think my customers would be resentful of having been the target of that kind of surveillance. His draws between 6,000 and 9,000 people, the journal reported. Yes, this is nothing more than a sham, and those local police officers and the police chief and the San Diego County, I believe his name is Sheriff Gore. How come you don't stop this damn thing? You're the same guy, you're the same Yahoo that let the ATF go into break into that Ars Armor, which they sell accessories and parts for AR-15s. And I remember the email you sent to me, and as in my past episodes, if you want to check it out, that, it has nothing to do with us. Yes, it does. It's a 10th Amendment stance. You should tell ICE to get the hell out of here. Okay, and that's just, like I said, it's really mind-boggling, okay? And I'm glad the ACLU is critical of it, and of course Gunners of America, which I'm a proud lifetime member of that. This is nothing more than Big Brother. Feds know best. And all those officers out there, local officers, even if you're deputies of San Diego County, you need to say, up yours, we're not going to help you. As far as I'm concerned, you're part of the problem. And what's your excuse? Oh, I was doing my job. No, on your oath. You wouldn't like if we start snooping in your neighborhoods, or snooping in your neighborhood, or snooping in your house, find out what you're doing where you live. Where you like that? No. So stop being a bunch of Uncle Toms and Aunt Jemimas and stand up for what's right. I'm saying to these police officers in that area, and that includes the rest of the country. I'm not your enemy, but this particular activities, you declare yourself an enemy, and I say that in good faith. Okay. Well, next one here actually came from Walter Williams. Came out today, and it said he published this his commentary. Says discrimination and segregation. It says here, I was invited along with several other American professors to deliver lectures at South Africa's University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg in 1979. Peter Willem Botha was the prime minister in apartheid, though becoming a bit relaxed was the law of the land. Under apartheid, intermarriage between blacks, coloreds, and Indians on the one hand and whites was prohibited. There was the Group Areas Act, which determined where different races could live. In addition, too many other racially discriminatory laws There were job reservation laws that determined who could hold what job by race. My lecture sought to produce the argument that in the free market settings, one is apt to observe less racial discrimination because it's costly to both the discriminated and the discriminator. So my lecture began with this question: why doesn't South Africa have a law against elephants flying? Elephants, having no radar and understanding the flight procedures, would pose a severe air traffic control problem. The answer to my question is simple, quite simple. There is no need for a law banning elephants from flying because elephants can fly. Think about South Africa's prohibition of mixed marriages of 1949, which banned marriages between people of different races. What about is job reservation laws, which requires that only whites be employed in certain occupations such as blasting, running elevators, driving engines, supervising boilers, and other machinery, supervising people shift, and overseeing mines? That's a question. A question naturally arises. If white people were not to intermarry, or if white mine owners will not hire blacks to run mine elevators and other machinery, why in the world will law banning them from doing so be necessary? The answer is that whenever there's a law on the books, one immediate suspicion should be that the law is there because not everyone would behave according to the law specifications. In other words, some people would intermarry and some mine owners would hire blacks in those reserved jobs. From the 1880s into the 1960s, the majority of American states enforced some form of segregation through what were known as Jim Crow laws. Here's a tiny sampling of those laws. It shall be unlawful for a Negro and white person to play together or in company with each other at any game of pool or billiards. All marriages between a white person and Negro or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the fourth generation inclusive are hereby forever prohibited. No colored barber shall serve as a barber to white women or girls. Separate free schools shall be established for the education of children of African descent, and it should be unlawful for any colored child to attend any white school or any white child to attend a colored school. Just in case of South Africa, why in the world would a law be required to prevent interracial billiard playing, interracial marriage, a black barber fixing the hair of a white woman, or white students attending a black school? Again, the answer is apparent. Not everyone will behave according to the law specifications. Some white women would patronize black barbers. Some white men would play billiards with blacks. At the bottom line is that racists cannot trust free markets to racially discriminate. Free markets with their dispersion of power have little respect for race. Racial solidarity could not prevent white South African businessmen from contravening laws that banned them for hiring blacks in jobs reserved for whites. In the U.S., Jim Crow laws were frequently ignored. In South Africa, the U.S. and elsewhere, the private desire for profits and other personal gain changed racial loyalty. Racists need the force of government to have success. Nowadays, there is not much respectability for using racism for rigging the economic game. More respectable forms that produce similar results are market interfering measures such as Davis-Bacon Act, minimum wage laws, and occupational and business license regulations. It's interesting because how I see this, it should be the individuals, not the laws or the lawmakers and so forth. So it's just very intriguing here. Get people thinking. And you know what? How I see this, if you got folks that still want to be discriminatory towards particular individuals, hey, in the open free market, hey, if they want to treat people like crap, doesn't matter what they look like, boycott them. And you know what? You get them where it hurts, their wallets. Because I remember one time, I remember listening to this talk show about a woman who was straight. and she was working at a gay and lesbian bar somewhere in South Florida. I believe I know it was somewhere in Broward County. I could be mistaken. And she got fired because of her being straight. And all the patrons loved her service. They all boycotted the club, and then what? Down the drain. Something to think about, my friends. So we don't need laws. We need to start thinking for ourselves. And what happened in South Africa? Yeah, it's in the books, but we could all ignore it. Because, like I said before, government needs us more than we need them. Stop playing a little game, But something to really think, man. Ignoring a little rebellion now and then is good. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. All right, finally, this came out today, or October 4th to be exact, by the 10th Amendment Center.com. Says Illinois City decriminalizes marijuana. Stop forward to nullify prohibition effect. In Lincoln, Illinois. Last month, the Lincoln City Council voted to decriminalize marijuana within the city limits, a step toward effectively nullifying federal prohibition in practice. Under the old law, possession of less than 2.5 grams of marijuana was a Class C misdemeanor, punishable by up to 30 days in jail and $2,500 in fines. The new ordinance makes possession of a small amount of marijuana a civil infraction, removing the misdemeanor classification for possession of less than 30 grams of marijuana. Any person possessing 10 grams of marijuana or less will now be subject to a fine of $250 to $500. Possession between 10 and 30 grams of marijuana is punishable by a fine not less than $750. The new order eliminates jail time for possession of less than 30 grams of marijuana, and those found guilty will not have a misdemeanor on their record. The new ordinance provides similar provisions for possession of drug paraphernalia. The council unanimously passed the new ordinance 8-0. The new ordinance puts the city of Lincoln more in line with the state law that passed earlier this year. It criminalizes small amounts of marijuana at the state level. In the Illinois system, local governments enjoy a great deal of autonomy in formulating their own policies. Impact on federal prohibition. This local decriminalization effort represents a kind of local version of anti-commandeering doctrine. The Supreme Court has long held that the federal government cannot force states to assist with implementation of enforcement of federal acts or programs. When states refuse to cooperate with federal enforcement, it makes it extremely difficult for the feds to assert their will. This has proved particularly true when it comes to marijuana. State legalization of weed and the end of state enforcement, sorry about that, nullifies federal prohibition in practice. Federal FBI statistics reveal law enforcement makes approximately 99 of 100 marijuana arrests under state, not federal law. The federal government simply lacks the resources to enforce marijuana laws on its own. We've seen this played out in every state that has legalized marijuana for medical and general use. Strategically, this kind of local action can help federal prohibition. Enough cities and counties in Illinois to criminalize marijuana. It will magnify the impact of the new state law and significantly hinder federal efforts to ban the plant in the state. This is a powerful strategy we can use to rein in federal overreach with a total bottom-up approach, starting at the local level and then working up through the state, ultimately eroding federal power completely away. And you know what? That's great. Everything's being done by steps, and I can't really argue about that, but no victim, no crime. That's how I see it. So at least it's all done by little, my friends, and I'm very happy this happened. And don't worry, that doesn't, like I said, to me it's a want, not a need, but it has a lot of great things. I've been studying stuff about medical marijuana for years, okay? So like Emperor Wears No Clothes, a great book. Check it out, by the late Jack Hare, who started Help End Marijuana Prohibition. And hey, that's how I look at it. And that's it. Well, I thank everyone for listening to the show. Please feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks, including all the rest of my episodes at my Spreaker website, Spreaker page. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting I haven't checked out yet, Whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Breaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Tumblr, Freedoms Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3. That's LokiLuck, the number 3 altogether, at gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.